Howdy! Today we've come to a place called Balloomba Falls, which is inland from the Sunshine Coast. We needed four-wheel drive to get to this point because the roads were really tough going. Let's have a look at what's living this high up in the mountains.
They sure were tough going. We even had to cross 2 rivers just to get to the dirt road that took us to the falls. And there are a lot of cicadas around, so you're going to hear some of those cicadas in the background because they were deafening. We had a really cool walk to the falls and found some interesting rocks and that termite mound. And then we got to this nice, clear-looking pool. Wow, isn't that spectacular?
Let's have a look at what's in the water though.
So we had a good look around in the water here and we didn't see any signs of life other than all of these plants and these glass shrimp. And they're called glass shrimp because you can see through them like glass. And the glass shrimp are found all throughout Australia. The glass shrimp lay eggs, but they hang on to their eggs underneath those little legs underneath their abdomen. And then when they're big enough, they'll leave their parents and go off to eat microorganisms and little bits of algae living in the river. There's quite a good view from up on the falls. And we wanted to have a look at what was going on in the pools down below. So we tried to find a path down there.
That wasn't anywhere near as difficult as I thought it would be. This is incredible!
There's just such a spectacular view all around this place.
Well, let's see if we can get down a little bit further. See what's going on in the creek. Oh, it's a bit tricky. Tricky getting down these rocks.
It sure was. We had to do a lot of climbing and clambering over these rocks just to get down to the bottom, and it took us quite a while. But when we did get down to the bottom, we had a good look in the pools, but there was no signs of any fish in the pools. Lots of water flowing though. I guess it was just too hard for the fish to get to this location.
Wow! It looks pretty difficult to get up this next bit.
But we found a way up. And this was right on the edge of a cliff. So one side there was a very steep drop that went down about 40 meters. It was very satisfying when we got to the top because we got a really good view of where we'd just come from and then a really good view of the area below us.
Wow! What a journey to get up here! But look at the view, it's incredible!
It sure is incredible.
Big film.
That's one long drop though. We have to be really careful walking along this bit.
What a journey! You can see behind me where we were just before. It was quite a climb getting up here.
And after we'd had a good look around at the falls, we made our way back down.
Alrighty, well, that's mad.
Going very slowly and carefully to avoid slipping and falling off.
I don't like brushing past all these bushes. It's exactly where ticks like to hang out and spiders. Oh, look at this. Something's lair. Wonder what could be living down there. Oh, what a menacing place.
Grandfather's beard.
Grandfather's beard.
I think.
There was some cool species of lichen that grows on the trees around Australia. As you can see, it was quite an ordeal getting back up.
Oh, look at these. some interesting looking berries on this plant here. What incredible colours. Look like they go blue when they're ripe. The ants seem to love them. No signs of any fish so far, but we haven't lost hope yet. We're going to keep exploring and see what we can find.
So we continued along our journey through the woods, and we came across this cool looking fungus. Isn't that amazing? And then there was this really cool looking moss right next to it. What an amazing species. You can see how untouched this area is. There was rainforest as far as you could see, which is something we really like to see. But we had to go back down along the road to try and find another access point on the creek.
This is one bumpy road, and I'm here with my best mate Connor, and we're gonna have a look at what's down the bottom of this creek. We've heard that there might be some cool species, so we're gonna have to drive along this road for quite a while and check out what's down there. Wow, this is one bumpy journey.
And immediately when we got to the river, it was so clear, and there were all these lovely rocks. And it was so clear, you can't actually tell how deep it is, but it's almost a meter deep where I'm standing at the moment. I was just so blown away by how clear this river was. It almost looks like there's no water there.
Wow, we have found some blue eyes. They are an amazing Australian native, and they're incredibly hard to find. So we're really lucky that we've managed to find some. Let's take a closer look at them from under the water.
And there they are, the Pacific blue eyes. Now, Pacific blue eyes aren't very common these days, but they used to be found all the way from northern Queensland down to the bottom of New South Wales. But they're becoming harder and harder to find because humans have destroyed their habitats, and also from introduced species which outcompete them in some of their habitats. They're called blue eyes because they have a really distinct blue eye. And the males have these really colourful yellow patches on them, and then these black and white tips to their fins. And when they see a female, which are much less colourful, but they still have that distinct blue eye, the males will flash their fins to try and impress her. They're very quick moving, so it's incredibly hard to get any footage of them. And anytime I'd get near them, they'd dart away. But we managed to get a few good glimpses at these blue eyes. And something we haven't come across on our journeys are these plants growing in the water. This creek had a lot of different species of plants growing in it. And look at how blue this water is. It's so clear and so reflective. Looking at the top of the water, it looks almost identical to the bottom of the water. And there were not only blue eyes, but there are also these crimson spotted rainbow fish. And aren't they beautiful? Crimson spotted rainbow fish are also found all throughout Queensland and New South Wales. They're much more common than blue eyes, and they have these wonderful stripes going down them. They have a red and an orange and a green and a black stripe, and As you've seen in some of our previous videos, they can get really colourful and even get a very bright blue patch on their backs, which you can see in these shots here. The blue eyes didn't seem to mind the rainbows at all. They'd swim alongside them very happily. I just can't believe how clear and blue this water was. It was definitely a very unique area. And we found these very strange looking... I'm not sure what they were, so if anyone can identify them, please let me know. I wouldn't have a clue where to start with what that is. And there's a very colourful male rainbow and a female rainbow swimming by. The females don't tend to have that distinct black stripe on their fins, and they're not quite as colourful as the males, and their body shapes are also a bit more slender. And the rainbow fish will lay their eggs in roots and bits of plant material along the sides of the riverbank. And there's some blue eyes swimming along in the shallow water in a nice school. They're so colourful. And the blue eyes will eat any sort of insects, mosquitoes, any little microorganisms living in the creek. They're really good at keeping down insect numbers and mosquito numbers. And a lot of people have them in their ponds for that reason. And they have a very interesting mating cycle. The male will show off his fins to the female during the breeding season, and she will lay 1 or 2 eggs each day for about a week. And then those 8 eggs can take a week or 2 before they hatch, and then they go off into the wild and will eat the little microorganisms and insects until they get big enough to become colourful like their parents. We didn't see any babies because it was just before their breeding season, which is why the males have such distinct colours at this time.
Yeah.
There, some of those males just flash out their fins to show the females how beautiful they are. It's like their way of asking them if they'd like to pass on their genes with this particular male. Now we moved a bit further up the creek to see what else was living in there, and we found lots of this plant. I'm not sure if it's a native. I'm not sure if these plants are native. It's really hard for me to tell the different types of plants, but maybe someone else knows them better and can identify them. But there was lots of plants all throughout this creek. And lots of blue eyes, which was so good to see. We've been trying to find some more blue eyes ever since that first episode that we found some in Kenilworth. And we got so lucky to find the numbers that we did in this river here. After that first creek where all we saw was some shrimp, we were getting a bit disheartened. But this really made it up for us, finding all these blue eyes and rainbow fish. Isn't it spectacular in this river? Don't those plants look so good? If you're into aquascaping, this would be a great environment to try and replicate. Now, swimming alongside the rainbows and the blue eyes, there were some intruders. There were some fish that are not native to Australia and have been introduced by one of the people living on the farms nearby. And these are called swordtails. You can see one of the swordtails. You can see 3, 4 swordtails in this particular part of the creek. And swordtails can outcompete the natives for resources. But in this particular creek, you can see the natives are doing very well. And swordtails, they come from Central America. So they're definitely nowhere near Australia, and the only way they can get here is by people introducing them. So it's really important, if you have fish that you don't want in your aquarium, not to put them anywhere near a creek or river or lake, any bit of fresh water. Because they can outcompete the natives, and we want to try and keep the natives in these creeks for as long as possible, because they're very threatened. And we continued further up the creek to see what we might find. It was so clear you could see any signs of the fish swimming by. And I saw this large school. These are called Marjories HardyHeads, which were named in 1948 by a man named Gilbert Whitley. Although he didn't mention at the time, it's believed that he named Marjorie's HardyHead after his sister. Now, they're only found in northern New South Wales and southern Queensland. In the wild, Marjorie's HardyHead is a primarily algae eater, but they will eat microcrustaceans and aquatic invertebrates as well. Their mouth parts are ideal for picking up little bits of gravel and sucking any bits of algae that might be growing right off the gravel. These are amazing little fish, and they make a great addition to your aquarium if you can find some. They're very active, and they'll stay in the bottom of the tank. When they breed, the male will nudge the female in her belly region, and then the female will deposit her eggs on some aquatic plants. And then the male will come along and fertilize the eggs, and they'll take up to 7 days before they hatch. And then the babies will swim around and eat very little microorganisms that they can find living in the river. You can see a good demonstration of their feeding behavior going on in this creek. They're sifting through the little bits of gravel and picking off little bits of algae and tiny little creatures living on the riverbed. They don't tend to swim up to the surface very often, and they school in such large numbers. I think they're an incredible creature. I'm really surprised they don't get more attention in the aquarium hobby. And this is the habitat they were living in. It's so blue. I've just never seen a creek that was as clear and blue as this one. There's a shot from above the water. It looks like it's so shallow, but it was almost 1 meter deep there. It was very peaceful walking along this creek. And we saw lots of these rocks that had courts within them. And someone had built a dam across this creek, which stopped the fish from getting above or below it. There's a campsite nearby, and it seems to be that people camping there like to dam the creek. And there's a lovely butterfly. We were lucky to capture that on camera. But we got too close and he flew away.
Sky chickens.
And then there were also these brown birds flying around in the tree. But I couldn't get a good view of them, and when I got close enough, they just flew away.
Are they natives?
They looked kind of like a pigeon, but they were brown and had a really long tail feather. There's a big tree that's been knocked over and washed down the river during one of the storms.
So clear.
And here's some more rainbows and some of those Marjories, HardyHeads, eating along the bottom of the river. Aren't they a spectacular fish?
As you can see, the creek has run out, and that means our journey has come to an end. But what an amazing journey it's been. We found some blue eyes and some rainbow fish, and what a beautiful creek. It's got such cool coloured rocks all throughout it. I hope you enjoyed learning about these species and the habitat they live in. Until next time, keep it murky.